If you don't subscribe to this channel right now, you risk staying stuck with your body's basic factory settings. Hit the subscribe button right now, because what we're going to talk about today could completely change your understanding of the physical and intellectual limits of the human species. Let's immediately clear up the biggest myth that has been moving from one science fiction movie to another for years. The popular claim that humans supposedly use only 10% of their brain, while the remaining 90% sleeps, waiting for better times, is complete pseudoscientific nonsense. Modern neuroscience, functional magnetic resonance imaging, and positron emission tomography clearly prove that we use 100% of our brain. Every part of it has its own specific function, and even when you're simply lying on the couch staring at the ceiling, your neural center is working at full capacity, controlling your breathing, heartbeat, processing background sounds, and balancing hormones. But let's ask the question differently. Not from the perspective of using the volume we already have, but from the perspective of an evolutionary leap. What if the human brain, as a biological organ, evolved, became more complex, or increased its computational power by another 10% beyond what we have today? At first glance, 10% seems like a modest number. In the world of computers, a 10% processor upgrade is almost unnoticeable. But in the world of biology and neural networks, an additional 10% of neural connections, synaptic density, or impulse transmission speed would not be merely a cosmetic improvement. It would be a quantum leap that would transform our familiar world into something completely nonlinear, frightening, and at the same time mesmerizing. Imagine the first days after your neural network received this 10% upgrade. What previously required years of exhausting learning now becomes a matter of a few hours or days. The speed of absorbing information increases not proportionally, but exponentially. Learning a new foreign language from scratch would no longer require memorizing words or grammar rules. Your brain would be able to read the structure of the language, its phonetic patterns, and intonation nuances literally from just a few hours of listening to podcasts or watching movies in the original language. Neurons would instantly build stable synaptic bridges, mapping out the new linguistic system. Abstract thinking would reach unprecedented heights. Higher mathematics, theoretical physics, or quantum mechanics, which today seem like complicated code to most people, would become a natural language for you. You would see mathematical formulas not as dry symbols on paper, but as three-dimensional, dynamic geometric structures in your imagination. Working and long-term memory would turn into a perfect digital archive. You could flip through a book, spending literally 2 to 3 seconds on each page, and your visual analyzer together with the cerebral cortex would scan and store massive amounts of text with camera-like accuracy. You would remember every detail, every word, every face you had seen, even briefly decades ago. Your perception of time would also change. Thanks to a 10% acceleration in the processing of sensory signals, the brain's internal clock would begin operating at a different rhythm. The world around you would seem slightly slowed down. Your reaction to external events would become razor sharp. Emergency braking on the road, dodging a falling object, or responding to an unexpected question from another person would happen for you in slow motion. Creativity and imagination would reach a level that was once considered magic. Musicians describe the feeling when a melody seems to appear on its own, but with an additional 10% of brain power, you could orchestrate complex symphonies entirely in your head, hearing every instrument separately and immediately, writing them down as musical notes without a single rough draft. Artists, writers, architects, and programmers could create finished products on the first attempt, skipping the stages of mistakes and rough sketches. But in our universe, nothing is free. The law of conservation of energy operates relentlessly, and this is exactly where nature gives us a harsh ultimatum. The human brain is the most energy-hungry organ in our body. Making up only about 2% of the body's total mass, it consumes roughly 20% of all the glucose and oxygen we receive while at rest. It works like an incredibly powerful supercomputer that constantly demands enormous amounts of energy and fuel. If you increase the brain's computational power and connection density by another 10%, its energy requirements would not rise by just the same 10%, but much more because of the complexity of maintaining the new neural networks. The brain could begin demanding 35% to 40% of the body's total energy. What would this mean in practice for an ordinary person? First, your metabolism would turn into a hellish reactor. You would have to consume an incredible number of calories just to keep your brain from shutting down due to starvation. Instead of the usual 2,000 to 2,500 kilocalories per day, your daily requirement would be 5,000 to 6,000 calories. You would be forced to eat practically constantly. Hunger would no longer be a mild discomfort, but an acute feeling of a threat to your life. Miss a meal, and your blood sugar level would drop to critical levels, causing dizziness, trembling limbs, and fainting. Second, there would be a fundamental problem with thermoregulation. Any computing technology generates heat during intensive operation. The brain is no exception. Even now, our body spends enormous resources cooling the gray matter through an extensive network of blood vessels. A 10% increase in neural activity would cause the internal temperature of your head during complex tasks or intense mental effort to rise to dangerous levels. Your brain would literally begin to boil. This would cause chronic, hellish migraines that could not be relieved by any ordinary painkillers. A person with forced superintelligence would constantly have to look for ways to cool down. From applying ice to their head to using specialized cooling helmets during intellectual work. Beyond physical and energetic exhaustion, there is another danger hidden deep within our psyche. That danger is sensory overload and the breakdown of emotional protection. Our current standard brain performs an enormous amount of work filtering information. It constantly blocks out 99% of background noise, the ticking of a clock in the room, the feeling of clothes against your skin, the hum of traffic outside the window, thousands of tiny details in your field of vision. This process is called sensory gating. It is necessary so that we do not go insane from an excess of events. A brain developed by 10% more would lose some of its ability to effectively filter out the junk. Sensory input would become excessively sensitive. Hearing. You would hear not just the conversation of the person next to you, but the hum of electrical wiring inside the walls, the operation of a transformer outside, the sound of a subway train several kilometers away, and the footsteps of your upstairs neighbors. Vision. Your eyes would notice every tiny flicker of fluorescent lights, every speck of dust in the air, and the smallest changes in the facial expression of the person you are talking to, making communication incredibly exhausting. Memory. The ability to remember everything would become a curse. An ordinary person is capable of forgetting unpleasant events and softening pain, resentment, and trauma. This is a protective mechanism of the psyche. With reduced filtering and absolute memory, every childhood trauma, every embarrassing action, or every loss would feel just as intense as if it had happened 5 seconds ago. This would inevitably lead to anxiety attacks, panic attacks, insomnia, and severe depressive states. Superintelligence without a powerful psychological defense mechanism would be the shortest path to madness. If we imagine that this additional 10% of brain development were received not by one person, but by all of humanity as a result of an evolutionary leap or genetic modification, it would completely restructure the social structure of our civilization. On the one hand, it would trigger an unprecedented technological explosion. Problems that we cannot solve for decades or centuries would be solved within just a few years. Cures for cancer, Alzheimer's, and other incurable diseases could be synthesized using new chemical models. The problem of nuclear fusion and limitless clean energy could be solved through new mathematical calculations. Interplanetary travel and the colonization of Mars would become everyday reality. But on the other hand, human relationships would undergo irreversible deformation. Empathy, the ability to feel what others are experiencing, is based on mirror neurons. Increasing their efficiency by 10% could make people almost telepathically sensitive to each other's emotions. Hiding lies, manipulation, or insincerity would become absolutely impossible. Politics, diplomacy, and traditional trade as we know them would simply cease to exist. However, if only the chosen few received such an upgrade, those who could afford expensive genetic procedures or biochemical modifiers, the world would split into two irreconcilable camps. A biological caste system would emerge. Ordinary humans and superhumans with a 10% advantage. This gap would be much deeper than the modern divide between the rich and the poor, because we would be talking about fundamentally different levels of perceiving reality. So, what do we have when all is said and done? An additional 10% of brain development would not turn us into wizards who could move objects with their eyes or fly. We are biological creatures trapped within the limits of the laws of physics, chemistry, and evolution. Instead of magical telepathy or effortless, hedonistic domination over the world, we would get unprecedented computational power, absolute memory, and lightning-fast learning. But along with that, hellish energy exhaustion, the need to eat 24 hours a day, a constant risk of brain overheating, sensory shock, and an endless headache. Nature spent millions of years creating our brain, perfectly balancing its power, size, energy consumption, and protective mechanisms. Our current brain is an optimal compromise between what is possible and what is safe. Perhaps the level of intelligence we have right now is the only one that allows us to remain sane, experience happiness, and at the same time avoid burning out from our own internal processes. Hit the like button if you think your brain has more than enough of its current factory settings, and definitely write in the comments, if you had the opportunity to choose, which one's superpower would you never give up, even knowing about all these terrifying side effects?